So, have you ever looked around and felt like everyone else is just ahead of you in life? And like, no matter what you're doing, it seems like everyone has more money, more success, and just more of everything? If so, you are not alone. This is a pretty common feeling. And in today's video, I want to break down 7 reasons why you might feel behind financially. And we'll actually uncover if there's any truth to these at all. My name is Joe, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. If you're someone who wants to understand the real mechanics behind wealth building, instead of just hoping things will magically improve, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up helping you see money differently. Now, before we dive into these 7 reasons, let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening here. The feeling that everyone is ahead of you financially is so incredibly common that it's practically universal. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. What you're seeing is rarely the full story, not even close. The first reason you might feel behind is that you're judging a book by its cover. Appearances on the surface usually aren't an accurate depiction of somebody's wealth. Let me give you an example with cars because this one is so common it's almost ridiculous. There's always this big misconception that what you drive is reflective of how much your net worth is or how much money you might be making. Pretend you have $600 a month to spend on transportation. Well, you're a reasonable and modest person, so let's say you go out and finance a used 2021 Toyota Corolla hatchback that has a price of $25,000. Your car payment is about $424 a month. And after everything is included in terms of gas insurance, etc., you're probably close to a $600 car payment for that used car. Your goal is to pay it off in 5 years, and then you just own the car outright, and therefore you don't have to make any more payments. But then you have a friend, let's just call him Eric, and you're both at the work water cooler one day comparing finances as many good coworkers do. And you find out that he makes the same exact yearly salary that you do. Eric shares with you that man, his car payment is killing him, and he confides in you that it's actually $459 a month for his car. You look at him strangely because, well, something doesn't really add up. You're paying close to what he pays, and you're driving a Corolla, but Eric over there is whipping around in a 2025 BMW i4. Not to mention, this really confuses you because you guys make the same amount of money, so you figure he must be lying. A 2025 BMW i4 retails for at least $53,000 when you Google it, and there's no way he has a car payment that's remotely close to yours. Now that's where you would be wrong, because Eric is indeed telling you the truth. What he's not telling you though is that he's leasing the car and he got a lease special. His lease only lasts 3 years, so he has to give up the car after that. And not only that, he had to put up $53.89 signing that he didn't tell you about when he was complaining about his car payment. His insurance and gas are both higher as well, and that's not something he shares with you either. So on the surface, both of you guys are spending roughly the same amount of money on a monthly payment, but if we dig beneath the surface a little bit, we can clearly see that Eric might be living beyond his means, all for appearances. But here's where it gets really interesting. This same concept plays out in so many different ways. Say you and a friend both decide to budget $500 a month for your cars. You choose to buy a decent mid-range car on a 5-year finance. By the end of those 5 years, you would have paid off the car and it's yours valued at around $20,000. On the other hand, your friend leases a car for the same $500 a month. Their car looks much nicer, and for 36 months, they get to drive around a new shiny car. But once the lease is up, they've spent $18,000 and have to return the car with nothing to show for it. But wait, this goes way beyond just cars. The same concept applies to credit card debt. In the United Kingdom, 38% of people carry credit card debt. And in the United States, it's about 44%. Many of these people fall under the debt revolver category, meaning they only make the minimum payments on their credit card balances each month. The debt keeps rolling over month after month, making it a cycle that's hard to break as they continue spending. Debt is one way of creating a facade of wealth. It's easy to look at someone else's shiny new stuff and feel like they're ahead, but often it's actually an illusion of them living beyond their means. But here's something that might blow your mind. This brings me to the second reason you might feel behind, which is that spending habits are invisible. Let's pretend you are someone who loves to invest money, spend on experiences like going to the Taylor Swift concert. Or perhaps you like to ride a camel in the desert. But then you might have a friend, let's call her Chloe, and she likes to spend money on the car, the bag, jewelry to the nines, and she gets her hair done every single month. However, Chloe doesn't invest any of her money, and when it comes to experiences, she'd much rather just Netflix and chill. So who's actually living a richer and fuller life? I would like to argue that you are. But maybe Chloe thinks that she is. While you might not have the possessions Chloe has, you have an investment account that is growing. Your financial peace of mind is improving daily, and you have lived a lot of different life experiences. The truth is that spending habits can be visible depending on what your preferences are for spending money. If you like to spend on material things, perhaps you like Back to the Future posters like me, it's going to be noticeable. Now, if you like building your wealth in the shadows, well, it's just not going to be as visible. So you really can't compare yourself to someone who might be of the former. And that actually brings me to my next point. The third reason you might feel behind is that people who have money won't actually show it off on social media. One problem I noticed that we as humans have is that we fall prey to easily looking to social media for role models or inspiration on how we should act, what to wear, or what to buy. But in my opinion, true wealth is pretty silent and actually not actually visible at all. So there was one time I went to go and meet my friend's dad for a lunch, and he's worth over 9 figures. And guess what he wore? He wore shorts and a simple polo shirt. Honestly, from the outside, he probably looked like your average Joe dad. He wasn't driving a fancy car. He wasn't wearing a flashy watch, and nobody would certainly know that he was rich. And oftentimes, the most wealthiest people that I meet in my own life generally are just the most down to earth and humble type of people, and they honestly don't try to be too flashy. Another story I want to tell you guys is that I grew up with a lot of really wealthy kids. Now, my family, we were well off, yes, but we weren't super wealthy. And one of the wealthier girls that I knew would always be traveling, and she would share photos of her family trips on social media. But what I noticed about it was that she would make it look very normal, like she would only showcase normal places that everyone had access to. For example, if she went to Rome, she might take a picture of the Colosseum or the Trevi Fountain, but she never was really showing you where she was staying or how she even got there. But at some point in my life, I got pretty nosy, so I asked some of her friends who are also my friends, like, how come she never just like showcases where she stays, or perhaps how she gets to the destinations that she gets to? Well, it turns out she was flying private everywhere, staying at really nice villas and 5-star resorts. And what I actually realized at that point was that wealthy people, they want to keep their wealth a secret because that way it's more anonymous, it's more private, and that also just means they're going to be more secure. And here's a reality check that might motivate you. A huge pitfall of society is that we see people with flashy cars or flashy bags on social media and just assume that those are the people that have money. But studies suggest that a significant portion of luxury goods are actually purchased using credit cards. This is true particularly among younger demographics. According to a Bain & Company report, luxury sales are actually being driven by younger generations like Gen Z and millennials. So just like earlier, you don't see what other people's financial situations look like. It's rather opaque. So I just don't want you to believe everything that you see on social media. But here's where things get really interesting. The fourth reason you might feel behind is that we are always trying to compare ourselves upwards in society. So what I've noticed is that people don't like to compare themselves to someone less fortunate than they are. It's not aspirational to compare yourself to someone that doesn't have that much. Comparison is truly the thief of joy. But if you ever compared yourself to those that have less than you, or even yet those that don't even have a reliable source of food, water, or shelter every day, that will give you the perspective that the life you live is probably 10 times more comfortable and could be way worse if you were just born in a different country or perhaps a different set of circumstances. Part of that is just the hand that you're dealt. You can't choose where and who you are born to. You can only make the best of the situation that you have now. But here's something that most people don't realize. There's upward comparisons where we look at people who seem to have more, they might have more money, a fancier car, a more luxurious lifestyle. And then there's downward comparison where we compare ourselves to people who appear less fortunate or successful. We as humans, and I admit this too, find it so much easier and we're naturally wired to compare upwards. But here's the thing, a lot of what we see when we look up is just an illusion. And the financial meme that looks so enticing is usually carefully curated. Many people use tools and structures that make their lives and finances look far more impressive than they really are. The comparisons that really matter are with those who look at investing for their future. Look at people who put their money into personal growth education skills. These investments might not be as flashy or visible, but they increase a person's future value and reduce their future obligations. It's a more grounded and fulfilling approach to personal finance. Part of that is just the hand that you're dealt. You can't choose where and who you are born to. You can only make the best of the situation that you have now. One of the ways that in our society we like to compare ourselves upwards is often with job title and career path comparisons. This type of comparison can be misleading because job titles don't always reflect true value skills or progress. For example, being a vice president at one company can have the same responsibilities of a senior manager at another. Titles vary so much by company, industry, or even what area of the country you live in, so I don't think they are reliable at all. Now, if you work at a startup, you should know that title inflation is a real thing. Startups need to keep their employees around, and sometimes giving someone an arbitrary title to make them feel better is basically a tactic that founders and chief executive officers will use to make people kind of stick around. Instead of comparing yourself to your friends who have different titles, try to think about your skills. Are you developing your skills still? Are you happy at work? Are you satisfied with the work that you're doing and the value you're creating? These are going to be much more reliable markers of true career progress. Lastly, I think instead of focusing on other people's titles, you should think about whether you are growing as a person. Are you gaining more skills? Are you moving closer to your own goals, or are you feeling stagnant? If that is you and you feel stagnant, then you might have to do something about it. That is going to be a much better use of your time and also more fulfilling than just comparing yourself to someone who has a much higher title. But wait, this brings me to the fifth reason you might feel behind, which is that you're expecting too much too soon. Another reason why it may feel like everyone seems to have more money than you is that we see stories highlighted all the time online of people turning small amounts of money into large amounts of money. For example, on Reddit's Wall Street Bets, if you read this subreddit for fun, you will inevitably see some gains that make you question if you should still continue working at your job. It can be really discouraging when someone makes $100,000 in one trade in just a few days, when you work the entire year and you don't even make that. Or perhaps when a trader turns $80,000 to 1.12 million in just a week. The thing is, though, is that you are literally only seeing the wins on this subreddit, and rarely are people posting losses. Now, if they are posting losses, they're so bad that if that happened to me, I think I would be at least in a state of shock for at least a year. Like, for example, this lurker who lost their entire life savings, and if you read the post, it is actually quite sad. He says, quote, "I would do anything to go back to where I was before the big sell-off on Friday. And yes, it was spy calls that killed me. Now, if that were me, I would probably need 5 to 10 years to recover from that, not just a year. But this sort of stuff happens all the time. It's just not really publicized. Sure, maybe one person out of 10 million actually does something crazy, like, when they turn $80,000 into 1.12 million, but that's only because it worked out for 99.9% of people. There's no such thing as a quick buck, and oftentimes making money does take a lot of sacrifice and diligence when it comes to sticking to something day in and day out. But here's something that might surprise you. The sixth reason you might feel behind is what I call the grass is greener syndrome. You may assume that someone who has money did not work for it. It's easy to look at others and assume that they're better off, but this is a classic case of the grass is always greener. The truth is that you don't really know what sacrifices or struggles they're facing behind the scenes. They could have worked on an oil rig for 10 straight years, never seen their family, and put themselves at risk for different types of cancer in order to make a really good salary. Or you might see an investment banker who's making a lot of money, but then you don't realize that they're actually working extremely long hours, up to 100 hours a week. Early on in their careers, they also need to be constantly available. They're often highly stressed just so that they can make a good salary when they're younger. So when you do finally see someone at the age of 30 who has, quote, made it, perhaps they had to give up a lot of their life for it, and these are the sacrifices you may not want to make. If you recognize this in particular, it will help you stop comparing your achievements to theirs, because maybe their challenges were bigger than yours. And here's the part that will blow your mind. The seventh and final reason you might feel behind is the silent cost of family wealth. Another factor to consider is that some people appear wealthy because they have family financial support or generational wealth. This doesn't mean that they didn't work hard, but they may have had a huge head start that makes their financial journey look a lot easier. For example, someone might afford a luxury apartment or frequent vacations not because of their job, but because they receive regular financial support from their family, or maybe they just inherited investments or property that gives them a cushion that many other people don't have. You never know what's on that other side. They may have more emotional baggage that comes with this. You just don't know. The key takeaway here is that family wealth and generational support can create an illusion of financial success that's not solely based on their own achievements. It's not something you can control or compare yourself to, so I think just focusing on building your own path can help you find more satisfaction and motivation with your life. But wait, here's something that most people don't realize that ties all of this together. You don't know what you stand for. We compare ourselves more often when we don't know what we stand for. Although we're talking about finances, this applies to every aspect of your life. If you're constantly focused on what other people have, what they're doing, you're always going to feel like you're falling behind. I'll give you an example. When I was about to quit my job at the time, all of my closest friends were climbing up the corporate ladder, getting promoted, or pushing for middle management roles. A lot of them were buying their forever homes as they were stepping into the next chapter of their lives. Whereas I was taking a huge step back. I decided to completely change what I was doing, to study, learn, grow in a completely different direction. And although part of me was really scared, I didn't feel at all like I was missing out. I knew that the direction I was going in was going to make me so much happier, and in hindsight, I was 100% right, because now I get to do this every day. Whereas in a parallel world, had I let that comparison control me and not known what I truly value and what matters to me, I'd be in a completely different place, far less fulfilling for me. When it comes to your finances, knowing what you stand for and forming your own perspective is unbelievably important, because if you don't align your spending with what truly makes you happy, you're always going to feel like you're lagging behind. You might find that you have joy in getting the latest upgrades or design clothes, and that's perfectly fine. Or like me, you might find more value in experiences like travel investing in learning starting a business. I might not have the newest phone or the trendiest wardrobe, but I'm content because my spending reflects what matters to me. And that doesn't mean I'm locked into these choices forever. I can always change my mind and realign with new values. You might not have everything that your peers do, but you'll have what you genuinely value, and that's far more fulfilling. But here's where it gets really interesting. This concept is one of my favorites because transforming how I compare myself to others has been life-changing. Instead of letting the question, why does this person make more money, bring me down, I ask, how are they achieving this? This shift turns envy into curiosity and growth. We often think others have it all figured out, especially when they seem wealthier or more successful. And it's easy to believe that they're just lucky or they have advantages that we don't. For years, I was skeptical about people making money online. I couldn't see how it was possible to make a living from it. But my perspective completely changed when I started learning and actually speaking to these same people. I learned they weren't just creating content, they were building brands, connecting deeply with their audience, diversifying their income streams. They were thinking outside the box in ways that I had never considered. And this is something that comparison can only offer when viewed through the lens of learning and growth. The same goes through investing. When I talk about investing or an 8% return, a lot of the comments are like, how do you get an 8% return? No bank is paying 8% interest at the moment. You're right, it's not. But I'm not talking about keeping your money in a bank account. The S&P 500 has returned on average over 10% over the last 100 years. Across any 20-year holding period, the annual return has always been at least 4%, apart from during the worst market crash in history. And in 79% of the time, the annual return was 8% or more. And in 59% of instances, that annual return was 10% or more. When you just take some time to learn about what someone else is saying and where it's coming from, and understand how they're getting there, your perspective and your growth trajectory completely changes. But here's the thing that really gets me. You're forgetting the trade-offs. Have you ever looked at someone else's success and thought, wow, they really have it all? I know I have, and it's so easy to see someone thriving and assume they've got everything perfectly sorted out. But we often don't see the personal sacrifices they've made to get there, or the ones that they're still making to keep it all together. We miss the late nights, the missed family moments, the doubts they've had to overcome. Take spending habits as an example. You might see someone jetting off to an exotic location and wonder how can they afford that. What you don't see are the sacrifices they're making elsewhere to be able to afford that. Perhaps they live in a modest home, they drive an older car, they skip out on new clothes because traveling is the thing that brings them joy. When you get to know people better, or you look at their lives holistically, you often realize that their sacrifices might not be the ones that you'd want to make. Understanding this helps you stop comparing your best moments to theirs because you recognize that their struggles might be incomparable to your own. But wait, here's something that might blow your mind. You're following the wrong set. When it feels like everyone around you is more successful or has more money, it's easy to fall into a trap of competition, but collaboration can take you so much further than competition ever will. I've been working on a personal project for about 4 months now, and I had almost finished it when a friend told me about a similar project that she had just seen launched online. When I checked out, my heart sank. I felt deflated, thinking I'd spent all this time, and now I have to compete with someone else who has already done it and launched and had elements of it that were better than mine, and I couldn't replicate. I could have just treated this as competition, but instead I emailed the founder, told him what I do, gave him a high level overview of my idea and how I think we could collaborate, and now we're working on a new product that combines both of our ideas and execution in one. And this really taught me that collaboration can open doors you never knew existed. Many people are willing to let their guard down if you approach them with a genuine interest and a collaborative spirit. It often just takes one person to break the ice and to set aside the ego and the pride, and the other person usually responds in the same way, realizing that you're not out to compete, but to build something better together. But here's something that most people don't realize. You haven't focused on you for a while. When was the last time you truly looked at your spending and asked if it makes you happy? It's easy to get caught up in tracking budgets and controlling expenses, especially if you've been following my videos. You're clearly dedicated to getting your finances on order. But in the process, you might have forgotten to spend on the things that bring you joy. Part of the journey in getting your finances together is also about enjoying the fruits of your labor. When you make room for spending on what genuinely makes you happy, you start to appreciate your financial decisions more. And when you're building your own financial confidence and you're so focused on your own path, you won't have time to envy other people or even compare to other people. So this weekend, take a moment for yourself, treat yourself to something that brings you happiness, whether it's a nice meal, indulging in a hobby that you love, a small treat, or even sitting down to thoughtfully track your expenses for the month. Let it be something that enriches your life. This way, you'll find more joy in your own journey and less need to compare yourself to others. So spend time on what makes you happy, what brings you ultimate fulfillment, and remember to focus only on the things that you can control. And try to just put up some blinders up for society and everyone else. And I think you're going to be a lot better off. You know, the truth is that feeling behind financially is rarely about what you actually have or don't have. It's almost always about comparison and the stories you tell yourself about what other people's lives must be like. But here's something that might surprise you. When you actually peel back the layers and look at the reality behind the appearances, you discover that most people are struggling with the exact same things you are. They might struggle in different areas, but nobody has it all figured out. Nobody has perfect finances. Nobody has a life without trade-offs and sacrifices. What you really want to focus on is just focusing on what you can do and what you can control, and trying to put blinders everywhere else. Because when you stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on building the life that actually matters to you, something pretty incredible happens. You stop feeling behind and you start feeling like you're exactly where you're supposed to be, working toward the things that actually matter to you. And that identity shift is crucial because it affects every financial decision you make. When you see yourself as someone who is building wealth in a way that aligns with your values, you start noticing opportunities to progress that you never saw before. You become more creative about finding additional income sources. You start thinking long term instead of just focusing on immediate gratification. The beautiful thing about this process is that it gets easier as you go. The first step is brutal. It requires significant lifestyle changes and constant willpower. But each subsequent step becomes noticeably easier because you've already developed the habits and mindset. So I hope this helps you see that you're not behind. You're just on your own timeline with your own values and your own definition of what success looks like. And honestly, that's the only timeline that matters anyway. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch my next video, it's going to be right here, and I will see you either in that video or a future one on my channel. All right, peace.